Victor Ellison didn't expect to play hero that night. He just wanted to get his daughter home before her bedtime tantrum kicked in. "Daddy, I don't like the fish smell." 5-year-old Hazel whined as she tugged on his hand outside the seafood restaurant. "I know, baby," Victor murmured, glancing down at her with a tired smile. "We're just picking up the order and then it's straight home. Mac and cheese tomorrow, I promise." He was halfway through the door when he heard the voice sharp, uneasy. "Please, I said I'm leaving." Victor paused. His eyes snapped toward the corner booth where a woman in a red coat was trying to slide out of her seat, blocked by a guy in a blazer who clearly didn't understand the word no. Victor didn't think. He handed Hazel her stuffed bunny and said softly, "Stay right here, sweetheart." Then he walked straight over. "Hey," Victor said calmly, planting himself between the guy and the woman. "She said she's leaving." The man scoffed. "Mind your own business." Victor didn't move. "She's not interested. Step back." The guy opened his mouth to argue, but the woman had already grabbed her purse and stepped out. "Thank you," she whispered under her breath, her voice shaky but strong. Victor noticed her hand trembled slightly as she adjusted her coat. The guy muttered something under his breath and stormed off. Victor turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Yeah, I just thank you." "That could have gotten worse." "No problem," Victor replied, glancing back to make sure Hazel was still at the front, hugging her bunny with wide eyes. "I've got a little one with me, so didn't want her to see anything ugly." The woman followed his gaze and softened. "That your daughter?" "Yeah," he said, a tired smile pulling at his lips. "Hazel, she's 5, loves bunnies and hates seafood." She chuckled, a real laugh this time. "She's adorable." "Thanks," Victor said. "You sure you're okay? Want me to call someone for you?" The woman shook her head. "No, I'll call a car. I just needed to get out of there." Victor nodded and started to walk back. Then she called out, "Wait, can I at least buy you dinner for helping me?" He turned, surprised. "You don't have to do that." "I want to," she said, stepping closer. "You helped me without even knowing me. Let me say thank you." Victor hesitated. He hadn't been on a date in years, and she looked way out of his league-pressed coat, flawless makeup, confidence radiating off her now that the jerk was gone. But Hazel tugged his hand again. "Daddy, I'm hungry." He looked at the woman and gave a half smile. "Only if Hazel gets dessert." The woman grinned. "Deal." They sat at a different table. Hazel warmed up quickly, especially once the woman ordered her a chocolate lava cake. "I'm Renna Ellery," she said, extending her hand across the table. "Victor Ellison," he replied. "So, what do you do, Renna?" She paused for a beat. "Family business, real estate. It's a lot, but I try to keep it low-key." Victor nodded. "Sounds important." "Sometimes too important," she said, her eyes flicking down. Victor didn't push. They talked easily as they ate, Hazel dominating half the conversation with stories about her teddy bear's hospital visit and her dream of becoming a princess doctor. Renna listened with genuine interest, laughing and asking questions that made Hazel beam. After dessert, Victor stood to help Hazel with her coat. "Thanks for dinner and the cake," Renna smiled. "Thank you for rescuing me." He gave a short chuckle. "Anytime." As they walked out together, Hazel reached up and grabbed Renna's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Victor blinked but didn't say anything. Outside, Renna's car was already waiting, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. Victor raised an eyebrow. "Nice ride." "Yeah," she said lightly. "Family likes to spoil me sometimes." She leaned down to Hazel. "Bye, Hazel. Thank you for sharing your lava cake secrets." Hazel giggled and hugged her. Then Renna straightened up and looked at Victor. "Can I see you again?" Victor blinked. "You want to?" Renna tilted her head. "You're a good man, that's rare." He scratched the back of his neck. "I work a lot. Construction during the day, bartending some nights, mostly just trying to keep things steady for Hazel." Renna's smile didn't falter. "All the more reason I want to see you again." Victor hesitated, then nodded. "All right, yeah, I'd like that." She handed him a small card. "This has my number, call me." He slid it into his pocket. "Will do." Renna got into the car and the driver pulled away. Victor watched the car disappear down the street, Hazel yawning against his shoulder. He didn't know that Renna Ellery was the CEO of Ellery Global Holdings, worth over $20 billion. And Renna didn't care that Victor drove a rusted-out pickup and lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. All she saw was the man who stepped in when she needed someone and didn't ask for a thing in return. And all Victor knew was that her smile somehow stayed with him long after she was gone. Victor didn't call her. Not because he didn't want to, he thought about it more times than he'd admit, but life had a way of getting in the way. Hazel caught a fever 2 nights after their dinner, and between juggling doctor visits, missed shifts, and a plumbing leak in the kitchen that turned into a small flood, the crumpled card with Renna's number stayed wedged behind a magnet on the fridge. It had been 8 days since that night. He told himself she'd forgotten, that she probably handed out her number to people all the time and hadn't meant it the way it sounded. Then she showed up. He was behind the bar at the private golf club, where he worked weekends pouring drinks for the kind of people who wore polo shirts with embroidered initials and didn't flinch at tipping $100 for a glass of wine. And there she was. Renna walked in like she belonged there. She wore wide-legged cream trousers and a deep navy blouse tucked in with casual precision. Her hair was pulled back, not a strand out of place, and she scanned the room once before her gaze locked on his. Victor nearly dropped the bottle of Pinot Noir in his hand. She crossed the room slowly, deliberate and composed, stopping just short of the bar. "You forgot to call," she said, not accusing, just stating a fact. Victor wiped his palms on a towel. "I meant to. Things got complicated." Renna leaned in slightly. "Complicated like forgetting. Or complicated like you didn't want to." He met her eyes. "Neither. I've just been trying to keep everything from falling apart." She studied him for a moment, then gestured to the stool. "I'll take a water with lemon." He poured it from the tap and slid it across. "So, what brings you here?" "My family owns the club," she said, taking a sip. "There's a board meeting upstairs. I skipped it." Victor exhaled through his nose. "You skipped a meeting to come here?" She gave a small tilt of her head. "I didn't come here for the meeting." He didn't know what to say to that, so he busied himself lining up the clean glasses. "You didn't ask what I really do," Renna said after a moment. "You said real estate, family business." "It's a little more than that," she replied. "Ellery Global." Victor froze, glass in hand. "The skyscraper people, that's one of our projects, yes." He set the glass down. "You're the Ellery?" "I am." He let out a low breath. "And you're here talking to me?" "I'm here because I want to be," she said simply. Victor leaned against the back counter. "You do realize I make less in a month than it probably costs to gas up your car?" Renna didn't blink. "And you still stepped in that night without hesitation. That matters more to me than titles or bank accounts." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You're not worried about what people will say. People already talk," she said. "They'll talk no matter what I do. I've spent years doing what's expected of me. I'm tired of it." Victor crossed his arms. "What exactly do you want from me, Renna?" She paused, her expression softening. "I want to get to know you, off the clock, no pressure, just see where this goes." He glanced down the bar. No one was waiting, no one even seemed to notice her. He looked back at her, still unsure what to make of any of this. "I get off in an hour," he said slowly. "I could meet you out back." "If you're serious." "I'll be there," she said, standing. She walked away without waiting for confirmation. Victor stared after her, the weight of the moment hitting harder than he expected. An hour later, he stepped out into the cool evening air, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. She was leaning against a silver convertible, arms folded, waiting. "You came," she said. "You left me a choice." Renna laughed. "I wasn't sure you would." He walked up beside her. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere quiet," she said. "I'm not in the mood for another crowd." He glanced at the car. "This yours?" "Technically the company's, but I'm the one with the keys tonight." He hesitated. "Hazel's with my neighbor. I told her I'd be back by 10. Renna gave a small nod. "We won't be long." They drove out of the city, the lights fading behind them as winding roads took over. Music played low from the stereo instrumental, something with piano. A far cry from the chaos of the bar, the stillness settled between them like something sacred. Finally, the car slowed near a quiet overlook. Below them, the city sparkled like scattered diamonds. Renna turned off the engine and looked at him. "I don't usually do this," she said. "Neither do I." She turned toward him, her voice quiet. "Why didn't you call?" Victor looked down at his hands. "Because I didn't think it made sense. You're this. And I'm just trying to make rent without the water heater exploding." She reached for his hand, warm against the cool night. Sometimes the people who make the least noise are the ones who mean the most. I don't care about the rest. He looked at her, really looked. You have no idea what you're getting into. Then let me find out, she said, eyes never leaving his. He didn't answer. He just leaned forward, pressing his forehead to hers, letting the weight of everything settle between them. And for the first time in a long while, Victor stopped worrying about what came next. Renna didn't wait for him to kiss her that night. She didn't need to. The silence between them had been enough charged, electric, and undeniable. But she didn't push either. She simply let her hand rest over his, and they sat there, watching the city below until the air grew too cold to ignore. Victor walked her back to the car, and when she drove him home, he didn't invite her in. He didn't have to. The way he looked at her when he said good night said more than anything else could have. The next day, she sent him a text with just 2 words. Friday, dinner, he replied with 3. If Hazel's invited, Renna didn't hesitate. That Friday, Victor stood outside a quiet Italian restaurant tucked into the edge of a neighborhood he'd never been able to afford a cup of coffee in, much less dinner. He checked Hazel's coat buttons for the 3rd time, then glanced down at his jeans. They were the cleanest pair he had. Hazel bounced on her toes. Is she coming? She's inside already, Victor said. She got us a table. The hostess took one look at Renna's name and led them straight to a candlelit table near the back. Renna was already seated, a coloring set laid out beside her wine glass. Hazel's eyes lit up. You brought crayons, Renna smiled, and a unicorn coloring book. I heard you might be a fan. Hazel squealed and climbed into the chair beside her without hesitation. Victor sat opposite, clearing his throat. You didn't have to go all out. I didn't, Renna said. This is just dinner. This place has cloth napkins, he muttered. Renna reached for her wine. So does my kitchen. Hazel was too busy coloring a glittering unicorn horn to notice the way her dad's jaw clenched. The waiter came, and to Victor's surprise, Renna ordered a simple pasta and sparkling water. Nothing fancy, no name-dropping obscure wines or asking for something off-menu. When the waiter turned to Victor, he ordered the same. After Hazel was occupied with her spaghetti and the promise of gelato later, Renna leaned in. I want you to come with me to something tomorrow. Victor raised an eyebrow. What kind of something? There's a charity event. My foundation sponsors it every year. It's outdoors, family-friendly, and Hazel would love it. There's a carousel. He leaned back. You want me to show up to some Billionaire playground in my work boots? I want you there, Renna said, her voice low but steady, with Hazel as my guests. Victor didn't answer right away. Hazel let out a soft giggle beside them as she tried to twirl spaghetti with a spoon. He finally said, I'll think about it. Renna nodded once and didn't push. The next morning, Victor stood in front of his bedroom mirror trying to decide if a navy button-down counted as formal enough. Hazel twirled in a soft pink dress Renna had sent over that morning, delivered in a white box with a note that simply read, just in case. He hadn't wanted to accept it, but when Hazel had gasped and hugged the dress like it was a princess gown, he couldn't say no. They arrived at the event just after noon. There were food stalls, flower arrangements taller than Victor, and a string quartet playing under a silk-draped tent. A carousel spun slowly in the distance, the horses painted gold and cream. Renna waited for them at the entrance. She wore wide-brimmed black sunglasses and a pale linen jumpsuit that somehow looked effortless and expensive all at once. Hazel ran straight to her. You were right. There's a carousel, Renna crouched down, and a magician and a cotton candy stand. But first you have to meet someone. Victor's stomach tightened. Who exactly? Renna rose and turned toward the tent. My father. Victor froze. Renna glanced back. I didn't tell him I was bringing a guest. Let alone 2. Are you sure that's a good idea? I'm not interested in good ideas today, she said. I'm interested in honesty. Victor followed her into the tent, Hazel skipping between them. Inside, silver trays floated past on the arms of servers, and every man wore a blazer. Victor felt like a fraud in seconds. Renna's father stood near a display of donation plaques, speaking with a group of men who all looked like they owned banks. When he spotted her, his expression tightened, then shifted to something more practiced. Renna, he said, stepping away from the group. You're late. I brought guests, she said, her voice calm. Her father's eyes landed on Victor, then Hazel. His brow twitched. Victor extended a hand. Victor Ellison, this is my daughter, Hazel. The man didn't take his hand. And what exactly do you do, Mr. Ellison? Victor let the hand drop. Construction and nights at a bar downtown. Renna's father didn't respond right away. Then, I see. You will, Renna said, her tone sharp. Come on, Hazel, let's find the ponies. She led them out without another word. Outside, Victor stopped. That was a disaster. Renna looked down at Hazel, who was now waving at a balloon artist. Not for her, Victor exhaled. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. He reached for her elbow. You're risking a lot. I'm not, she said. I'm just finally choosing something that feels real. Victor looked at her, and for the first time he saw the strain behind her polished control, the exhaustion of always having to prove something. And the way her hand gripped Hazel's like it grounded her. Hazel tugged at Renna's arm. Can we ride the carousel now? Renna smiled. Absolutely. Victor watched them walk ahead, laughing like they'd known each other forever. And for the first time since the night they met, he started to believe this wasn't temporary, that maybe just maybe this woman wasn't looking for a fantasy. She was looking for a home. Hazel fell asleep in the back seat before they even pulled out of the event parking lot. Her sticky fingers still clutching the balloon dog Renna had won for her at the ring toss booth. Victor glanced at her through the rearview mirror before looking over at Renna in the passenger seat. She's not gonna remember half of it, but she'll talk about it for weeks. Renna leaned her head against the window, her sunglasses pushed into her hair. That's the best kind of memory. He hesitated before speaking again. Your father's gonna give you hell for today, isn't he? He already has, Renna said. I left the post-event dinner early. Victor kept his eyes on the road. You didn't have to do that, I know. But I wanted to. They drove in silence for a few blocks, the city beginning to dim into early evening. He pulled into his apartment complex slowly, careful not to jostle Hazel awake. He parked, then turned to Renna. You want to come up? She looked over at him. Are you sure? He nodded. Hazel's not waking up anytime soon, and I think we need to talk. Victor carried Hazel up the steps, her head nestled into his shoulder. Renna followed, careful not to step on the cracked tile outside his apartment door. Inside, the space was modest but clean. A small table with a missing chair leg, a couch with a throw blanket that had clearly seen better days, and a wall lined with Hazel's crayon drawings. He laid Hazel gently in her bed and returned to the living room, where Renna stood near the window, looking out at the streetlights flickering on. My mom used to live in a place like this, she said. Victor raised an eyebrow. Didn't think billionaires came from crumbling drywall and leaky faucets. She didn't, Renna said, but before she married my father, she had a one-bedroom walk-up in Queens. I used to visit her there after school when I was little, before the divorce. I remember thinking it was magic because she let me eat cereal for dinner and fall asleep on the couch. Victor leaned against the wall. What happened to her? Renna's voice turned softer. She passed away when I was 18, cancer, fast. My father threw himself into the company after that, expected me to follow right behind him. Did you? I did, she said. For a long time I thought it was what I was supposed to do, but lately. She turned to face him. Lately, I've started wondering if the life I built was ever mine to begin with. Victor didn't speak right away. Then, you ever think about walking away from it? Every damn day, she said with a bitter laugh. But it's not just about me. There are people who rely on me, employees, projects. Boards, there's too much tied to my name now. He sat on the edge of the couch. So what are you doing here with someone like me? Renna took a step closer. Because when I'm with you, none of that matters. You don't want anything from me. You don't expect me to be anyone except exactly who I am. He looked at her, his voice low. And who are you, Renna? She didn't answer immediately. Then, someone who's tired of being alone. Victor stood. I can't give you the world. I can barely make rent half the time. I'm not asking for the world, she said. Just a place in yours. He stepped closer. I've been trying to protect Hazel from chaos her whole life, from disappointment, from people coming and going without warning. If you're in, Renna, I need to know you're in. She reached for his hand. I don't make promises lightly, but I keep the ones I do. He searched her face for hesitation, but there was none. I'm not perfect, he said. I mess up. I get tired. I forget to buy milk and sometimes yell when I shouldn't. I've had perfect, she said. It's cold and lonely and exhausting. I'd rather have something real. He kissed her then not out of impulse, but because everything else had already been said. It was slow, deliberate, and full of the kind of aching relief that only comes when two people finally let go of everything standing between them. When they pulled apart, Renna rested her forehead against his. I want to build something with you, Victor. Something that's ours. He nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. Then let's do it right. Over the next few weeks, they did. Renna didn't retreat back into her world. She showed up to Hazel's school art show, to Victor's job site with lunch in hand, to the corner park on Saturday mornings when Hazel begged to feed the ducks. She wore jeans more often, tied her hair back without styling it, and let herself laugh in ways Victor had never seen before. Victor, in turn, let her in. He told her about the night Hazel's mother left, about the years he spent feeling like he was drowning and the nights he prayed Hazel wouldn't notice. He showed her the photo albums he kept hidden in the closet his parents, now gone, and the childhood he never really got to have. One Friday evening, as they sat on the couch with Hazel asleep beside them, Renna turned to him. My board's trying to push a merger. It would mean less control for me but more time. I've been thinking, maybe I let them. Victor looked at her. You sure? She nodded. I'm done proving myself. I don't want to be the richest woman in the room. I want to be the happiest one. I still can't give you luxury. You gave me Hazel's laugh, and a kitchen that smells like cinnamon toast, and someone who looks at me like I matter more than my net worth. That's priceless. A week later, she invited Victor and Hazel to a rooftop dinner, not a gala, not a fundraiser, just dinner under twinkling lights with a private chef and a view of the skyline. Hazel wore a crown made of daisies, and Victor wore a suit that Renna had tailored for him without telling him the price. At the end of the meal, she stood and looked at him with something steady in her eyes. I bought the brownstone on 9th, she said. The one with the garden in the back and the room with the little alcove window. Victor blinked. That place costs a fortune. I know, she said, but it's not for me, it's for us, for Hazel, for movie nights and burnt toast and birthdays with too much cake. He stood slowly. What are you saying? I'm saying move in with me, she said. Let's stop pretending like this is temporary, let's make it permanent. Hazel ran to her, arms wide. Does it have a backyard? Renna crouched. A big one. Room for flowers and maybe even a puppy. Hazel screamed with joy and hugged her tight. Victor looked at the two of them, his chest tight. Then he walked across the rooftop and pulled Renna into his arms. Yes, he said against her hair. Yes to all of it. And just like that, the woman who had everything found the one thing she didn't know: she needed a home built not on wealth, but on love. And the man who had nothing but a daughter and a worn-out heart finally found someone who saw him not as a fixer-upper, but as the foundation of something extraordinary. Victor stood in the center of the brownstone's sunlit kitchen, the smell of freshly brewed coffee weaving through the air. Hazel's laughter drifted down from upstairs as she played in the new reading nook Renna had carved into the alcove window just for her, complete with plush cushions, a tiny desk, and shelves already stacked with picture books and glittery markers. Renna leaned against the counter, barefoot in a silk robe, watching him with that quiet amusement she only wore when she thought he wasn't looking. But he was, he always was. She's already claimed that entire top floor, Victor said, pouring 2 mugs and handing one to her. Told me I'm only allowed up there if I knock 3 times and bring snacks. Renna wrapped her hands around the mug and raised an eyebrow. Reasonable terms. She's establishing her rule early. She takes after you. She takes after the both of us, Renna said, her voice softening. They sipped in silence, the kind that didn't need filling. Outside, the street was quiet, the usual city noise dulled by the thick, ivy-covered walls of the brownstone. The move had been fast but not chaotic. Renna had handled everything with a precision that made Victor's head spin, and yet, somehow, she'd still paused long enough to let Hazel pick the paint color for her room, and helped Victor find a vintage record player at a tucked-away Brooklyn shop he mentioned liking only once. You're adjusting, Renna said, setting her cup down. Victor nodded. It's still strange waking up without hearing the radiator groan like it's dying. You miss it. I miss knowing every inch of a place. I knew that apartment like the back of my hand. This. He looked around at the marble countertops, the custom cabinetry, the gleaming fixtures. This feels like a dream I haven't caught up to yet. Renna stepped closer. You know what I miss? He looked at her. The nights I'd go home and everything was perfectly in place. My schedule, my evening, my life. Now I trip over Hazel's shoes, lose hours making pancakes shaped like animals, and I wake up with your arm wrapped around me like you're afraid I'll vanish. Victor blinked. And you miss that? No, she said. I miss thinking that was enough. He pulled her to him, slow and deliberate, his hands settling on her waist. We're really doing this. We are, she whispered against his shoulder. And I'm not going anywhere. Later that afternoon, they took Hazel to the park, the one with the little puppet theater and the carousel she'd become obsessed with. Victor held her hand as she ran toward the swings, and Renna trailed behind, her heels swapped for sneakers. As Hazel swung higher, her shrieks of joy mixing with birdsong, Renna sat beside Victor on a bench beneath a sprawling oak. You know what my attorney said yesterday? She asked. Something terrifying, I'm sure. She told me the board signed off on the transition. I'm stepping back officially. I'll still have a vote, but I'm no longer required to attend quarterly meetings or travel every other week. Victor turned to her. You're really letting it go. I'm letting go of the parts that didn't belong to me, she said. I kept the ones that did. And what are you going to do now? She smiled slowly. I've been thinking about starting something local, a center for single parents, workshops, resources, child care for people who can't afford it. You know, something actually useful. He stared at her, taken aback. That's incredible, she shrugged. I figured you might help me design the space. I kind of know a guy in construction. I'd work for free, he said. No, you won't, she replied. You'll work for the best salary I can offer, and I'll argue with the board until they approve it. They sat in silence for a moment, watching Hazel leap off the swing and tumble into the grass with a triumphant laugh. You know, Victor said, I never thought I'd get a second shot at this. At love, at family, at building something real. Renna rested her hand over his. Neither did I, but here we are. That night, after Hazel fell asleep sprawled across the couch with popcorn in her curls and a juice box still clenched in one hand, Victor carried her upstairs and tucked her in. When he came back down, Renna was already lighting candles in the dining room. What's all this? He asked. She uncorked a bottle of wine. A toast. He crossed his arms. To what? She looked him dead in the eye. To saying yes. He stepped closer. To what? Renna reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, square box. Victor blinked. Is that? She opened it. Inside sat a simple band, not flashy, not covered in diamonds, but elegant, solid, and unmistakably meaningful. I figured you'd never ask, so I'm doing it myself, she said. Victor Ellison, will you marry me? His mouth parted, but no sound came out. Then he laughed, stunned and breathless. You're serious. I've never been more serious in my life. He took the box from her, stared at the band, then at her, and dropped to one knee. I was going to ask you tomorrow, he said. But screw that. Yes, 1,000 times. Renna pulled him up and kissed him like they had all the time in the world. They married in the backyard of the brownstones 6 weeks later. Hazel wore a flower crown and walked their puppy down the aisle. Renna wore a gown that shimmered like it was woven from moonlight, and Victor wore a suit stitched to fit not just his frame, but his life now, a life he'd never imagined, but couldn't imagine without her. They danced barefoot under strings of lights, surrounded by friends who had become family. And as the sun dipped below the rooftops and laughter floated on the breeze, Renna leaned into Victor's chest. Do you think she'll remember this day? She whispered, watching Hazel twirl in circles. She'll remember how it felt, he said. Safe, loved hours. Years passed. Hazel grew tall and strong, her laughter still the soundtrack of their home. The community center opened its doors and Victor led the design, throwing himself into every detail. Renna ran it with the kind of passion that made headlines, but she never missed a single dinner. Their home filled with warmth, music, and the kind of love that didn't need proving. And every night, when Victor curled beside her in that oversized bed beneath the slanted ceiling of their room, he'd kiss her hand and whisper the same words, "Thank you for choosing me." And Renna, always half asleep and smiling, would whisper back, always.